Welcome to Cattle Connect, your insight into Alabama's beef cattle industry. I'm your host, Kayla Greer, and this is Cattle Connect, brought to you by the Alabama Cattlemen's Association.
Welcome back to the 8th episode of the Cattle Connect podcast as we welcome the SLE Rodeo to town, which has created quite the busy week for our staff. There's one thing that has given us a little bit of a break, and that is that the Alabama legislature is enjoying its first of 2 week-long breaks during the 2024 session, and it couldn't have come at a more convenient time for our staff to break and focus on the rodeo. But today, we are going to be doing a little bit of talking about the legislative session. We'll be doing a mid-session report on where things left off on the 15th legislative day prior to this week's break. As a reminder, the two bodies have 30 days to conduct business of the state, which means that the legislative session is more than halfway through, believe it or not, and there is still a lot of ground to cover. So, Erin, let's not waste any time. Before we get into the livestock-specific packages that we're going to talk about today, give us an update, and this is a biggie. I know I'm teeing you up right here with not quite so much of a softball, but give us an update on where things left off with school choice and gaming.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. You know, those are really two topics, along with IVF, that have really popped up as biggies, you know, as we say, sucking oxygen out of the room. But certainly watching those, you know, as we get here to the mid-year break, mid-session break, as I should say. Right now, as far as school choice goes, it is passed through both the bodies. The governor has signed it. And so, you know, Alabamians are looking at the opportunity to get a $7,000 annual tax credit to be used for their choice of school, whether that be private or public school. There's also a tax credit in there for homeschool families. So a big change for those that have been tracking the school choice bill. In the area of gaming, you know, the gaming package continues to be debated. As I'll remind everybody, it passed out of the House first. It was a pretty comprehensive gaming package, included a lot of things outside of just a lottery. It got up to the Senate, and after a good bit of debate and negotiations, a Senate version did pass out going into the spring break last week. And it's pretty different from that House version, Kayla.
It's very different.
Yeah.
And it took about 8 hours to get through all the different things. The Senate debated for 8 hours that day, and it was quite the battle on the floor.
Yeah, I'm glad we don't do anything in gaming.
That's right. That would have been a long day in the State House.
That was good, but just, you know, for everybody's general information on that, what we're looking at is a pretty different version out of both the chambers. And so typically in that instance, you know, what will happen procedurally is that the Senate version will go back down to the House, and the House can either concur, or what we most likely will see in this instance is going to be a conference committee. And so what that means is that we'll have leaders from both the House and the Senate that are appointed and go into that conference committee. And the idea there is that they're supposed to come out with, you know, a negotiation on the bill that everybody can agree on. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see if that happens. And in the event that doesn't happen, then that piece of legislation will fail. It won't move forward anymore. So if that is a topic that interests you, stay tuned because it should get interesting after spring break here. All right, that's the two non-livestock bills that we're just keeping an eye on. You know, ACA, we've said this before, ACA does not have policy to support a position on either gaming or school choice, but we know that those two things affect you as citizens of Alabama, so we keep an eye on them and are able to talk on them if necessary. But Erin, let's get into the livestock and private property rights bills that we're interested in this session, starting with our livestock fencing tax exemption. Where is that landed?
Yeah, as a lot of y'all know, that's our priority bill this year. And just want to give a quick shout out to Senator Jack Williams. He's really been just a champion for that bill. He is carrying it in the Senate and done a lot of work on our behalf and helping us out to try to get it passed. But so far, it has made it through a Senate committee, so it passed out with a favorable report out of the Senate Education Budget Committee. And so really right now we're waiting on some floor action for this. It looks like the budgets for the ETF, the Education Trust Fund, are actually starting downstairs in the House. And so we may see that start to move in the House side. And then, you know, you can do that. You can kind of get things moving on both sides.
Yeah.
As a reminder, Representative Danny Crawford will be carrying it for us in the House. And so, you know, we're getting some good traction and, you know, feel like, you know, we're in a positive direction with that bill. So hopefully we can get it across the finish line.
Yeah, and like you said, Senator Williams has been such a champion for that. He's been a war horse, so if you see him out and about, be sure to tell him thank you. We're looking forward to seeing where this bill goes throughout the last 15 days of the session.
And he's had his cowboy hat on all session, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, he is proud of that cowboy hat. Every time we walk into the office, he says, "Ooh, this is a new one." Now, moving on to a not so glamorous topic. This is just something that prior to the session was not really a conversation. It was not something that we had on our radar, but this is what happens when you get groups of people together and start having conversations. You know, we've mentioned before that the Alabama Ag Coalition meets every Tuesday morning, and that's a conglomeration of agencies and associations representing Alabama's ag industry that gets together every Tuesday morning prior to the session kickoff that week, and we share thoughts, we share concerns, and we keep each other abreast of what's going on in each other's industries. And one of the things that arose out of that meeting is the concept that the Alabama Code relating to dead livestock had not been updated since 1919. And no, I did not misspeak. I said 1919, meaning over 100 years ago. So as you can imagine, it's a little outdated, and that conversation has led to a piece of legislation now. So, Erin, tell us about that.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So, Department of Ag and Industries, really in the last year or so with the state veterinarian, Dr. Fraser and his team, they've been dealing a lot with high-path AI, right? Avian influenza, and it's been a lot of disposal going on. There's really a lot of movement in the state to try to look at different technologies for composting animals, for just, dealing with dead animals, which is a part of life if you're in the livestock industry.
It is a part of it.
It is. And so, right now, as you alluded to, Kayla, the code really, it outlines two things that you can do with dead animals. You can bury them or you can burn them. And so as the department has kind of outlined and looked at, okay, well, what are some other things we can do? Felt like we needed some tweaking to that language just to make sure that we're, in compliance from the code standpoint. And so we're working with the Department of Ag and Industries. We've got Senator Josh Carnley and Representative Matthew Hammett carrying, no better way to say this, but it's a dead animal disposal bill. And all it's going to do is really just give the Ag Board, which is, a group of folks that oversee the Ag and Industries department, gives them the ability to promulgate rules as it relates to dead animal disposal. And so makes it to where we don't necessarily have to go back to the code every time we need to maybe integrate a new technology. But hey, if you're somebody that maybe is using an incinerator, or you're looking at composting or any other method outside of burying or burning. Thank you, Kayla. Boy, I can't get all my B's out there. This is something, this really is just a procedural thing for us. So we'll see if we've got enough time to get that one across the line.
Don't rely on podcasts alone to stay connected to Alabama's beef industry. Follow us at AL Cattlemen on Facebook and Instagram to get daily news and updates from the Alabama Cattlemen's Association.
So let's kind of move along. Kayla, your turn now. Give us an update. We've talked a little bit in the last podcast about the bill related to cell culture products. I know that's kind of a hot button for a lot of people, but yeah. I know at the county level, I've been going to a lot of county meetings, getting a lot of questions about that bill. So give us an update where we're at on that one.
Yeah, so we know that bill passed easily out of the Senate. It's SB 23. It's being carried by our friend Senator Jack Williams. It passed through the Senate unopposed and went to the House committee, where there was a little bit of negotiation and chatter about it. There was a public hearing that was held on it. So it took actually 2 weeks in committee to get through. So it's through committee, and it's waiting for its turn on the House Special Order calendar. That bill, again, it would outright ban the manufacturing, sale, or distribution of cell-cultured food products. And I want to note that when we say cell-cultured food products, we are not talking about plant-based protein. That is an entirely different, no pun intended, animal. And there's been a lot of confusion about that as the conversation around this bill has evolved. But we're not talking about soy burgers. We're talking about fake meat, which is derived from the cells of animals. Like, think Petri dish, stem cells, generating meat from the stem cell of an animal. As it's worked its way through the House committee, one amendment that was made that we considered a favorable amendment, it would allow for federal, state, or local governments or institutions of higher education, so our colleges who are conducting research, to do that within the state and do it lawfully. That actually came about at the request of NASA because they have to get creative with their food products that they send with astronauts. So that's where that is. It is through the Senate. It's through House committee, and it's waiting to go on the floor on the House side and see what happens there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that kind of knocks that one out. Another one that I know is really important. I've talked about this one also at a lot of our county meetings, one that we are very, very supportive of, but the real property tax assessment. This is a good one for landowners, Kayla. So give us an update there.
Yeah, and it is a priority of Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth's office, as many of you heard about if you were at convention a couple of weeks ago. They're calling it the real property tax assessment. It's being carried in the House by Representative Philip Pettis and in the Senate by Senator David Sessions. It's worked its way through the House committee, through the General Fund Budget Committee there. It started out with the language stating that it would cap at a 3% ad valorem tax hike. Again, things happen in committee, negotiations happen in committee, and it actually came out of committee with an amendment that raised that percentage to 5% versus 3%. But a cap is a cap is a cap. So that was considered friendly, and it passed out of the committee favorably. And now it's waiting for its time on the House calendar as well. We have a lot of bills, it sounds like, that are through the committees, which is really the hard part. And just waiting to get on the floor.
Yeah, and there's a lot of support around this bill, especially in the business community.
Yeah.
We've signed on to 2 different letters of just support with a lot of other associations. My friend Rosemary over there, NFIB, really leading the charge there, and appreciate the work when we can coalesce and come together, to push some of these bills, fight some bills, and other things that go on. So this one, I feel like, Kayla, that this one is probably one of the best things that we could pass this session from a landowner perspective so far that we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like I said, negotiations have to happen in the House or in the State House in general. So a 3% cap versus a 5% cap, obviously we would have loved to see that 3%, but we're okay with a 5%.
Yeah, I think so. And we're not the only state that is looking at this. What we've learned along this process is that a lot of states have looked at doing these caps, and it's just as a business owner, as a landowner, you need to be able to set your budgets and at least have an idea of what you're going into for the year.
That's right.
With this cap, everybody can kind of plug that number in and know, okay, I'm not going to get a 14% jump this year from last year. That's something that you can't account for.
That's a big setback. Yeah,
absolutely.
And when there's not a cap in place or there's no codifying on how it can be done, that you have no idea what you're going to get hit with in terms of budgeting prior to the year. So this will be helpful. Like you said, people can go ahead and figure out that top 5% and just go ahead and factor that into the budget for the year. And hopefully you won't have to worry about it at all.
We hope you're enjoying this week's podcast, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Get benefits like this and so many more to stay connected to Alabama's beef cattle industry today by visiting us online at bamabeef.org/join.
All right, Erin, before we let everybody go, can you chat a little bit about what we think is coming as we are approaching the end of the first week-long break? We have a week here coming up that we're going to be in session, then they're going to break again, and then go hard at it to finish out the session following that second week-long break. So tell us what you think's coming down the line.
Well, we certainly have a lot floating out there on things that need to get either, go to conference committee with some of these biggies. We've got several bills, as we've mentioned today, that we're trying to, get up on the floor and get them across the finish line. But, one thing that has not even started to get discussed is budgets. And
the biggie, the one job that they have is to pass budgets.
They've got to pass the budgets. And, I think I told you this a few weeks ago, Kayla, this is nothing new. Typically, you've kind of got that first half where they're doing all these biggies, and they've really hit some big topics here in the beginning. So it's not all that unheard of that we're just now starting to talk about budgets. But we will see those really start moving, getting up in committee, really having to track those a lot and watch and make sure that, things that we have priority on from a funding perspective, stay in there. So we'll be tracking that. And so I really think that that's going to kind of round us out and get us to the end. It looks like we're going to go, into May, which is expected. And, we'll probably be getting up to that day 105 pretty good. So it should be wild as it normally is. And expect we'll have some late nights just waiting, hoping that our bill gets up on the calendar. And so, but that's just how the session goes most years.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride as we finish out the last 15 days of the 2024 Alabama legislative session. So y'all stay tuned. Continue to check your magazine as a resource. We've been putting a lot of political updates in there. You can always refer to the blog or the podcast here to stay abreast. And if you ever have questions, please call our office and chat with Erin or myself. And if we don't have the answer, we'll find it for you. So this week's podcast might seem a little shorter than usual, although it did not lack in content. But as we welcome the SLE Rodeo to town, I think, Erin, we ought to put our boots on and head out to the Coliseum.
It is about that time, but I think we have to do fast facts first, right?
Oh, that's right. Fast facts. Let's cue it up. All right, y'all know what that sound means. It's time for the Cattle Connect Fast Facts. So, Erin, hit us up.
All right, number one, I just want to put a highlight. We talked about the rodeo a second ago. Man, the first event of the rodeo was the SLE Livestock Judging Contest. And that thing, Kayla, had over 430 young people.
That's insane.
From 10 different states this year. So that is kids, that is college teams, and that's just an exciting, growing event every year. Check out more details in the magazine on that. Secondly, I want to, hey, if you're a young cattleman, if you're a producer 21 to 40 years of age, we are coming up on the deadline for applications for the YCLP Young Cattlemen's Leadership Program. So get those into the office, call Reed if you have any questions, but we'd love to have you a part of that Class 11 that we're kicking off this year. And then thirdly, something exciting for us. It's FFA Day on the Hill. And so we will be welcoming lots of blue coats to the building. We're working with our friends at Alpha to have a session here at the building, and just look forward to seeing all those smiling faces. Love FFA Day, and just a lot of fun to see a lot of our cattlemen members too that serve as ag teachers. So going to be a great day.
Y'all be sure to call us if you're in town. Bring your class by the museum. We'll give you the $2 tour of the building if you need it, and we look forward to seeing y'all. So please give us a call, and be sure to come back next week for more Cattle Connect podcast.
Well, folks, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Cattle Connect, brought to you by the Alabama Cattlemen's Association. Be sure to subscribe to get notified when our next episode goes live. And until next time, remember, beef, it's what's for dinner.